All right, this story is a little bit old, but I don't think its message is any less relevant. It's funny how in the gaming news industry, a story being a week old is old, but anyway, let's discuss it. Skip it up and that up. So as you remember, in February, it was announced that Activision Blizzard would be laying off 800 people from its staff, approximately 8%. This is actually what the company president, J. Allen Brock, said about the situation and why they were laying people off. Over the last few years, many of our non-development teams expanded to support various needs. Currently, staffing levels on some teams are out of proportion with our current release slate. This means we need to scale down some areas of our organization. I'm sorry to share that we will be parting ways with some of our colleagues in the U.S. today in our regional offices. We anticipate similar evaluations subject to local requirements. Now, these layoffs left a lot of people scratching their heads because in the fourth quarter earnings report, the company made $7.26 billion in physical and digital games compared to $7.16 billion in 2017. So they actually made more revenue in their fourth quarter earnings report in 2018 than they did at the same time in 2017. And they're laying off people, yet they're making more money. Things get even more interesting. They're making record profits over at Activision Blizzard. I know what happened with Destiny and what happened with the whole Diablo Immortal fiasco, but things are still going okay over there. No, it doesn't really seem like there's a need to lay off 8% of their staff. But when you get into how much the CEO, Bobby Kotick over at Activision, is making when these people who are probably making about 90 grand a year, maybe, are getting laid off, it just makes you realize that life is not fair. And even if he took like a $1 million pay cut, he could afford to keep 10 of those people. I'm sure not all 800 of those people didn't have a good work ethic. He couldn't say that every single one of them sucked. But anyway, this is an interesting article from Kotaku. It's by my dude, Jason Schreier. I don't agree with him on anything, but I think he's one of the best game journalists out there. And this is what he had to say about Bobby Kotick. Now, keep in mind, this article is about a year old, so Bobby Kotick's salary could have fluctuated, and his stock shares with Activision Blizzard could have went up and down, but I'm sure the guy's doing okay. Going to read you a little excerpt from this article from Kotaku, and then we'll discuss. Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick's compensation for 2017 was $28,698,375. According to filings the video game publisher submitted earlier this week to U.S. Security and Exchanges Commission. Don't be too jealous, though. It's actually a pay cut. Poor Bobby. Whatever shall he do? But it's still over 300 times what the median Activision employee made. Bobby Kotick, who has long been one of the most highly paid CEOs in America, made $33,065,560 in 2016, per the Security and Exchanges filing. So the year before his pay, a combination of salary, equity, and other miscellaneous compensation, was $4.3 million less than what he made 2 years ago, or now 3 years ago. Now, keep in mind, this article from Jason Schreier came out from Kotaku in early, I think, May 2nd, 2018. And at that time, I'm making it like it's 20 years ago, but it's almost a full year ago now. But the average salary for an Activision employee was $93,660. So Kotick's pay compared to the average Activision employee pay is on a ratio of 306 to 1. And before everyone goes into, oh yeah, everyone's compensated for how hard they work and what their position entails, you know how hard developers work? Remember the crunch time stories about Red Dead Redemption 2? They hustle, man. They work way harder than $93,660 a year. Way harder. Now, there was also a petition put out from Game Workers Unite that wanted to see Bobby Kotick fired, but if you got to fire Bobby Kotick, you basically got to fire every CEO in America, because if you think this is the only salary discrepancy out there and the CEO is making $50 million a year, yet they're still laying off employees, if you think this is the only situation that's happening I got bad news for you. Not saying the system doesn't have to change, but firing Bobby Kotick is not going to remedy the flaws in American capitalism. And it gets even worse. Both Bobby Kotick from Activision and Andrew Wilson from EA are two of the most overpaid CEOs in America. They made the top 100 list, with Bobby Kotick being number 45. And Andrew Wilson, the poor little man that he is, he's barely scraping on that list. He's at 98 out of the 100 most overpaid CEOs in America. Trust me, they're both doing okay. Now, like I'm pretty sure anyway, I said previously in this video, I'm all for capitalism. I don't want to see where people get angry at other people's success. If you work hard and something you create or a business you create becomes wildly successful and you become a multi-billionaire because of it, hey man, Godspeed to you. I'm not trying to knock you down a few pegs. It's great that you achieve success through your hard work or through your innovation. But the discrepancy in pay is with 306 to 1. And those employees that work, those developers that work for these corporations, these game development companies or publishers, they're literally making themselves sick to make these games great. There's sometimes where the shareholders want the game out by a certain quarter, especially if they want it out by holiday season, and these guys are, sleeping 2 hours a day or 4 hours a day and living at the office, and they're doing voluntary whatever. I love how Rockstar is like, oh yeah, we're giving our employees full permission to be transparent and talk about how much they loved working 18 hours a day. Come on, man. These guys are breaking their backs, making themselves sick, ruining their mental and physical health to make these games come to fruition and make them great. And they're not even making six figures a year, where Bobby Kotick, which I'm not saying the guy doesn't hustle, but Bobby Kotick's sitting there making 28 million, 30 million, and then there's, I'm sure, his shares. The guy's got to be worth like $500 million, if not more. It's not fair, man. Look, again, I'm all for people achieving success, and if your success makes you wildly rich and successful, if I can talk today, great. But this shouldn't be. You shouldn't have one guy be able to, own 20 small islands while the other guy working his ass off for Bobby Kotick can barely keep his lights on. Yeah, $93,000 and change is a good salary, but for how hard those guys work, those developers should be making more, and it's not fair. And some of the people that were laid off from Activision, you could keep 10 of those people if Bobby Kotick, who's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, took $1 million off his salary, he could have saved 10 jobs. But they won't do it because they don't care. This is Rich of Review Tech USA signing out. Have a good one.